to our Sunday service. This is your host, Bruce Venture, here to serve the people of Earth. Quick disclaimer for legal purposes and whatnot while we wait for people to get here. I am not a medical professional. Nothing I say is intended as health advice. Any major changes you make to your diet or any other aspect of your lifestyle, something you check with a doctor with before enacting in your own life. Furthermore, I am not a financial advisor. Nothing I say is a recommendation for investment. I'm also a law-abiding citizen. Nothing I say is an admission of guilt. And lastly, but not leastly, all opinions are my own. No way, shape, or form a reflection of the opinions of YouTube, Google, or any other network you may be viewing or listening to this on in the future. That being said, let's commence. Today, due to a dramatic uptick in traffic, which is, I suppose, a good problem to have, we have enabled subscriber-only chat. Okay, so you will have to hit the subscribe button if you want to join our conversation, because the traffic in the has been overwhelming lately, and the application simply can't keep up with it, and so it starts deleting comments at the top of the chat, which makes it hard for me, or impossible for me, to get to everyone's comments, and that's just not fair for the people. That being said, don't forget to also turn on notifications in case we have an unscheduled stream. Our normal streaming hours are Saturdays at 6 p.m. Central Time and Sundays at 10 a.m. Central Time. So here we are live from Costa Rica. Max, thank you for being here before I even got here. I appreciate you for giving us something to work with right out the gate. It's always useful. Erica Sanchez, thank you for being our second chatter. Max says, how to deal with the fear of getting a bad reincarnation next time. Bashar says, we get to choose our reincarnation. What do you think? Well, definitely don't be fearful, okay? Because I'm going to go ahead and go to the second part of this question of what Bashar says about getting to choose our reincarnation. And that is, in a sense, true. But when he says we get to choose our reincarnation, it's not our linear soul that is going to choose that reincarnation, but our oversoul that's going to choose that reincarnation. And our oversoul is quite unsympathetic to our fears or desires or so on and so forth. So you fearing a bad reincarnation is indeed the very thing that is most likely to cause you to have to live through the irony of a situation where you can overcome that fear. You see what I'm saying? Because this is all a refinement process. We are creating divine personalities for the next dimension. You see what I'm saying? That's what your own personal linear soul is all about. So by fearing something, you are in some way manifesting it. And instead of fearing it, what you should do is simply take the most obvious action, because that's what karma is, right? Reincarnation is all about action, and karma is action. That's what karma means, right? Towards that not happening. And being fearful of it is definitely not the proper action, but rather to build up your positive karma. And that's why we have things such as what they call karma yoga, right? So rather than living for yourself and worrying about your own linear soul process and worrying so hard about liberation, right, from samsara and whatever, from the cycle of suffering, what you should instead do is worry about relieving the suffering of others, right? Live a selfless life, right? Where you are improving the lives of as many other people as possible. So by improving the lives of others, you're actually improving your own life, be it in this specific reincarnation or in the next, right? There's nothing more powerful than karma, right? And that can be, most people think of karma as a negative thing. They think of it as like, oh, okay, did something bad, something negative is going to happen to me, but that's only half the equation. What you can instead do is focus on the other side of it, and it could be your greatest superpower. You know, they say, oh, karma's a bitch, but karma can be beautiful as well. It's just about the way that you're living your life, right? Try to think like God, right? When we say God, we think of, we're talking about that the second tier oversoul that's living through all of our karmas, right? That's experiencing every single life on this planet simultaneously, side by side, right? And make the experience of God as good as possible. You know what I'm saying? So, start thinking about others. But when you're thinking about others, don't think about others as like, oh, this poor person that needs help, or this poor soul, or oh, my poor soul, my poor reincarnation. Think of everybody as God. When you encounter somebody that's going through a bad time, look at it and be like, damn, God is having a hard time in this body right here. Why is God doing that to themselves? Look at everything as God. It doesn't, not just humans, animals, you know, the environment, nature. Go pick up some garbage off the beach, you know, go feed some stray dogs, right? Go read the Tibetan Book of the Dead to people in hospice. You know what I mean? Like, alleviate suffering for others, because your ability to alleviate your own suffering is limited, but your ability to alleviate the suffering of others, you have a lot more flexibility to work there, because there's a lot of people that are suffering more than you. If you have time to be here on YouTube, if you have time to worry about being in a bad reincarnation next time, and that you're not in a total pit of despair right now, starving on the streets or whatever, on your deathbed, on your last days, just spending your last days in dire pain, then guess what? You're not doing that bad. You're doing pretty fucking good, right? If you got time to watch Bashar, life's not that bad. So just start focusing on God. And when I say focusing on God, I mean focusing on everything, right? Go find the park or something in your neighborhood that looks like shit and fucking clean it up. Make it beautiful so that other people go there and they go, this is a beautiful park. Instead of like, oh shit, we better get out of here. We're in a bad neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? That shit's contagious. Other people will see you doing that, notice what you're doing, and they just might do the same thing. Like, someone yesterday hit me up on Instagram asking me for money to feed stray dogs in the Philippines. And of course, I didn't send them money over the internet because I don't know if they're really going to go feed stray dogs or what their situation is. They might be driving a Bentley and asking people for money on the internet. I don't know, but it inspired me that when I get off this stream today, I'm going to go buy a bag of dog food and start carrying around in my car so I can feed the stray dogs in this area, because they're all over the place. See them all the time, going through garbage and shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, even if whether that person's really doing that or not, they improved the life of stray dogs in Costa Rica without even being in Costa Rica. Just by making an impression upon me, be it was true or be it not true. It doesn't really matter. You see what I'm saying? It's contagious. So don't worry about your karma, because you can only do so much within your own life. You could stoke the karma of many lifetimes by doing for others. You know what I'm saying? By being selfless. And the last thing that you want to do is be operating from the frequency of fear, no matter what you're doing. I mean, literally anything. Even if you're in a fucking horribly terrifying situation, the worst thing that you can do is be fearful. Fear is like one of the absolute lowest vibrations. Fear, shame, hate, guilt. These are the things that you never do. These are the things that, all these things are easily approached through karma, through action. If you're experiencing any of those emotions, the answer is always action, right? Because you're experiencing karma. You see what I'm saying? The fact that you feel that way is a product of your karma. It's not a product of your situation, right? What about your situation makes you think that you're going to get such a bad reincarnation? Are you out there kicking puppies, pushing down old people? Are you doing bad things? Like, why are you so fearful of that? You got to ask yourself, can you do the opposite of all those things? Can you be out there helping puppies, helping old people, doing your part, doing good things? Yes, you can. So whenever we're dealing with these lower emotions, which are kind of tied to the lower chakras, it always is about karma. Once we pass up into this area of unconditional love, it's a really good sign that your karma scales have tipped into the positive. Once you're experiencing things like unconditional love, once you're looking around, you're seeing God in all things. This is your indication that you are succeeding in your mission to stoke your karma into a positive way. You see what I'm saying? So, that's a great question. Thank you so much for that, Max. That's a great way to start off. Noi, good to see you. Tony, good to see you. Michaela, I should say, good to see you. I'm so happy to see you. Kalalala Falala feeds the animals in her backyard daily and helps her community a lot, because you're right. All things are God. I love what you're preaching. Good vibes. Well, thank you so much for coming here. I'm so glad. I guess I don't have to ask you to become a subscriber, because since you're chatting, I know you're a subscriber, because today's a subscriber only chat. And I'm so happy to have you here. I hope that you'll come back for our future streams as well. Because this is the kind of energy that we're trying to create a community out of, right? Rohit Kumar Panaik says, if there is God, then why is there evil? Well, because of Kalalala has answered this for me, but I'm going to, before reading Kalalala's thing, I'm going to say the same thing. It's because of duality. You see, all things exist in contrast to one another, right? The moment that good becomes apparent, evil also immediately becomes apparent. You can't have one without the other. If we were to eliminate all evil, right? Then does that mean suddenly everything's good? No. The lesser good will become the new evil. You see what I'm saying? Because all things exist in contrast, right? Let's just say right now, all the evil, all the people promoting wars and suffering and doing horrible things on earth, that people round up a posse, an army or whatever, and go and destroy all those people. We'll just wipe them out, right? Now, is there no evil? No, the very people that solved the problem become the new evil. They sacrifice themselves, right? So this is just the nature of our world. Does it mean that we should not fight against evil? No, we should be in a constant state of improvement, but it doesn't mean that we'll ever succeed. There's always going to be evil. So, because the thing is like, everything is God, right? As we said. And so you're saying that the existence of evil somehow negates the existence of God, but that's not true. You see what I'm saying? Like when you go to the gym and you're lifting weights and your muscles are burning, right? Or you're running, right? And your legs are just burning and you keep pushing through and you just keep tormenting yourself. You're just burning, 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 burning. Are you doing that because you're evil? Because you're some type of sadist that wants to torment your own body, your own muscles? No, you don't enjoy that, probably. But you're making yourself stronger. You're improving yourself, right? And this is the same thing that we're doing here on this earth as an embodiment of God, is that we're making ourselves stronger. We're refining ourselves. We are refining our higher consciousness into something that is better than what it is. Do you see what I'm saying? It's a process of refinement where we're tormenting ourselves so that we can also help ourselves. And we can learn in this process. We could even the infinite, right? The infinite consciousness, the infinite intelligence. And through this land of duality, experience so many contrasting things that it creates wisdom that is worthy to be called God. And that can go on and exist in the higher planes of existence, right? And whatever happens up there is happening up there. But it's a refinement process. You see what I'm saying? One second, let me relocate real quick. Boom, boom, boom. Sorry, it's a little uncomfortable right there where I was sitting. Okay. There we go. That's more comfy. All right. Cellular says, duality. You can't have good without evil. To accept both as parts of you is eye-opening. It actually makes you a better human because your empathy expands. And there you have it. You see what I'm saying? This is a known thing. Once you embrace higher consciousness, the truth of this becomes apparent. It's not just good and evil. It's all things. You know what I'm saying? Like, is a feather light? You know what I'm saying? Is lighter than lead? Is it lighter than a leaf? Is it lighter than air? You know what I'm saying? What about big and small? You know what I'm saying? Like, am I big or am I small? Compared to an elephant, I'm small. Right? Compared to an ant, I'm big. Right? Is the universe big? Is the earth big? The earth is big compared to us. Is it big compared to the universe? Or no. Is it big compared to the sun? No. Is an atom big or is it small? Right? It's small compared to what we can perceive. Does that mean that an atom in itself isn't an entire multiverse with multiple universes inside of it? No. Right? When we communicate with things interdimensionally, does it necessarily that we're communicating with something super far away? Or are we communicating with something on another plane of existence? Right? What is the world like to us? And what is the world like to a bacteria? Right? Can we even perceive what it's like to look through the eyes of a tardigrade? They're living in a completely different dimension. What is dimension? Dimension is a metric of size, right? We say, what are the dimensions of something? We're looking for the measurements, right? What is the ocean compared to the land? Is it another dimension? Kind of, right? What is life in the ocean like compared to life here in the dry world? Everything exists as contrast to one another. You see what I'm saying? It's a big, you know what I'm saying? It's a big yin yang. You can talk about it all day long. You can try to put it all into words, but you can't really put it into words. How many atoms make up our body? How many universes could that be that exist just singularly within inside ourselves? And how many universes, as we experience, as we think of the universe, does it take to make up whatever that's making up, to make up the multiverse, right? So all things in contrast, right? La says, in the darkest parts of yourself, you'll find your own light. And that's true. You know, shadow doesn't exist without life. Well, shadow doesn't exist without light, right? So the moment that light becomes apparent, so does darkness. You see what I'm saying? Let's see, YouTuber Max says, I had to chuckle if you got time to watch Bashar. Yes, you know what I'm saying? Devastation says, hi Bruce, how are you? I have a question. In adult scenes, what's your secret to lasting the entire time a scene needs to last? Do you use meditation or a pharmaceutical remedy? Best regards. You could say it was a meditation. I would say that's probably was my introduction to meditation, though it was unconscious. So I explained this in the past, and I'm going to explain it the same way that I explained it in the past before I even really knew what meditation was or how to do it. Okay, but you know, they'll try to give you different tricks and this and that. You know, people will say, oh yeah, you think of something, if you're getting too close and you need to pull back, oh, you think of something gross like toenails or whatever, right? But that's really bad advice, because now all of a sudden you're out of the moment, you're thinking about gross things, and that makes bad things happen, right? And similarly, like say if you're supposed to be finishing soon, some people will say, oh, well, think about your best moment, your best memory of this and that. Also bad advice, takes you out of the moment, this and that. Other people will say, oh, you know, count backwards from 100,000. You know, that'll slow you down, this, that, and the other. Right? Also bad advice. Always best to stay in the moment. So what I would do is, because the best thing that's going on at that moment, the very reason why you might need to pull back, is because something amazing is happening right in front of you, right? You're interacting with a woman being one of the most beautiful creations of God, right? You're having this amazing experience, and sometimes that gets you overly excited, right? On the other hand, you're also not in a private moment. There's bright lights going on, there's people standing around, there's a microphone pointed at you, there's some bearded dude hanging over you. There's negative things going on as well. And so what I used to do is that I would just simply expand or contract my awareness. If I needed to increase my energy towards the action that I was doing, I would focus in on the girl alone, right? And maybe if I wasn't that attracted to her, I would focus in even tighter to something I did like about her. Whatever, even if it was just a small thing. Maybe it was even just a collarbone or something, like, not that great. Or maybe if I was being overwhelmed, I was getting too much energy towards the situation, then I expand my awareness. I start becoming aware of the lights and how the lights are bothering me. Start becoming aware of the camera. Start becoming aware of the people standing around. See what I'm saying? So it's all just an expansion and contraction of awareness, which is meditation, right? It's exactly how we meditate. We expand and we contract our awareness, right? In your normal day-to-day life, you're somewhere kind of in the middle, where you're mildly aware of all things going on around you, right? But you're not totally focused, right? And now, if you wanted to go into a really deep state of meditation, right, you would go to the extreme ends of either one of those sides of that field, right? Where you can either become single-pointed focus on something, a thought, or concept, or your own breath, right? Or even nothing at all, like the lack of all those things, right? Your own subtle energies within your body. Or you could go to the other completely opposite side of that, where you start becoming aware of everything. And when I say everything, I mean like things far, far outside your physical senses, right? Where you become aware of the entire planet, you become aware of the entire solar system, where you become aware of the entire universe. And maybe even at some point you become aware of the multiverse itself and everything in it and all consciousness, right? And this is how you get into really deep meditation, by expanding and contracting your awareness, right? Like if you contract it far enough, you have what they call in yoga dhyana, right? Which is the withdrawal of senses, right? And if you expand it wide enough, then you have what they call in yoga samadhi, right? Which is oneness with all things, when you realize that all things are interconnected, right? But it also works in scenes and personal life endeavors. So you could look at it either way. Noi, thank you so much for the gift. I appreciate you. Erica Sanchez says, I love listening to your insight. Thank you so much. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. And I appreciate your appreciation. And thank you for being here. Kalalala Falala says, you have a loyal follower. Thank you for giving this space. Thank you for being here in this space. You are more than welcome. Eric Lozano says, me too. Keeked Media says, I recognize your face, mate. You won the genetic lottery. Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Kalalala Falala says, kicked that energy won't be tolerated. Human beings are art. Try to see everyone as art. Find the beautiful parts of humans, which is their energy, what they preach, how they move, be kind. Very much so agreed. Free my brother forever. It's only us. Ain't no love for the others. We set them up like blurred ski. I don't know what that means, but it was a comment that I just read. And Sheila Muse says, talk about twin flames. You know, I'm not 100% sure that I believe in twin flames, though I do believe in that there is, I mean, I'm not closed to it. I don't know that I am a fan of the concept enough that I can personally comment on it from a place of like knowing or expertise or confidence. But I do think that true alignment between two people, you know what I'm saying? Like finding your perfect little crooked puzzle piece is something that for anyone, no matter how run-of-the-mill, plain Jane kind of normal person that you are, or how extremely weird and unusual that you might be, I think that it's a really difficult thing to do. And that a better approach is to become more fluid and less rigid, right? If you're a piece of, think of everything as water, right? If you become ice, if you become hardened, right? To where you're brittle, it's going to be harder to find, to mesh with others, right? But if you become fluid, right? You're just another drop in the ocean. You can kind of just be part of everything without effort, right? You can find harmony, right? So rather than trying to eliminate everybody else and saying, oh, okay, twin flame this, and I don't even know, I think from what I do know of the twin flame theory, I don't even know that twin flame is necessarily like a good thing. I don't think that twin flame is necessarily supposed to be like your soulmate kind of thing. I think it's more like somebody that triggers you intensely because they are like a mirror of yourself, and so that they bring to the surface your own strengths and your own weaknesses. And so it's looking in, it gives you the ability, not everybody can see themselves in everyone else, but every once in a while you come across a person that reminds you of your own demons, reminds you of your own angels, reminds you of your own strengths and your own weaknesses. And that mirror can be really hard to look in sometimes, right? Because when you look at another person, your first instinct is to judge them, right? Right? Because it's always easier to judge somebody else than it is to judge yourself, right? Because we're our own harshest critics. But when we see somebody else, when we meet somebody else whose personality or habits or so on and so forth are similar to our own, right? That it becomes a mirror, right? And looking in a mirror that won't lie to you, looking into a mirror that you don't have your own ego protecting you from, because your ego will protect you from your own self. Your ego will tell you, oh no, you're okay. You're fine. Like there's a reason why you did that. There's a reason why it's like that for you. But is there a reason for other people? No. Your ego's the opposite side on that. Your ego says, oh, no, they're bad. They should do it like this. This is a better way. Because your ego doesn't see through their scope of perception. Your ego looks through your own scope of perception. But the moment that your ego sees somebody that is a mirror of you, sets it on fire. And that's why twin flames, the theory of twin flames is that it's somebody that comes into your life and triggers the destruction of your ego. Okay, so now I don't know if I nailed that. I don't know what the normal theory of twin flames is, but that's my theory of twin flames. So I hope that helps. It's somebody that triggers the destruction of your ego because they're a mirror of you. They remind you of yourself, and your ego can't lie to you all of a sudden. Its little story to protect you suddenly breaks down. It doesn't make any sense. And it puts you in contact with your real self, with your true self, with the self that it chooses to listen or to ignore your ego. Right? Because all of a sudden your ego's story doesn't fucking make sense anymore. Excuse my language. But your ego's story suddenly breaks down and it doesn't hold water anymore. Because you looked in that mirror and your ego couldn't take it. And it falters. Kalala says, Bruce, you're doing right, man. Extremely refreshing. Thank you so much. Sheila says, the ember that burns within each of us, only to be ignited, born again, resurrected like a phoenix, bringing the love that resides within alive twin flame soulmates. Okay, I'll take it. Benjamin says, you're a dude. I am a dude. My dude. Eric Lozanzo, keep this YouTube rated and try to be respectful. You know, actually, I'm sorry, dude. You gotta go. You can watch, but you can't comment anymore. Let's see. Bottlenecks says, why is your last name XXX? I don't understand. Well, I used to be in adult industry, and my original name on Twitter was that, and then somebody stole my name on YouTube with the no X's. And so I've been trying to get the no X's one back, but I couldn't get it. So instead of having like mismatching names, I took all the XXXs on all the streaming networks. So I have the Bruce Venture XXX thing on like Twitch, on I got it on Twitter, I got it on YouTube, I got it on TikTok, so on and so forth, because everyone steals my name because I was, you know, fairly well known within the world. So people go on, they're like, okay, what's my name? Okay, let me try that. Oh, look, wow, I'm excited. I stole Bruce Venture's name. So, yeah, it's an unfortunate situation, but rather than hiding my past, we accept that that past has a lot to do with the person that I am today. And even though I'm not really so much in that industry anymore, I don't try to hide it. So we accept things as they are, not as we'd like them to be. Awareness is key. Sean Paul says, where are you from? Some philosophies right there. I think you are spiritual. So what religion do you belong then? I don't belong to any religion. I actually am somewhat anti-religious. I think that religion, while it can be a tool for the enlightened being to go into deeper states of enlightenment, I think that somebody really has to achieve higher consciousness through experience before they can truly understand religion or use religion in a way that can help them achieve even higher states of consciousness, right? So for most people, religion is something that holds them back from true realization, from self-realization, because realization is something that can only happen through experience. It can never truly be put into words. All the religions of the entire world are really kind of coded spiritual alchemical formulas and things, right? And the uninitiated can't understand those alchemical formulas, right? So what the first step should always be is purification, right? It's fasting, it's silence, it's isolation, right? It's unlearning everything that you know, which takes you to initiation, right? And once you initiate yourself to where you become aware of higher consciousness, then if you want to go back and look at the esoterics, the teachings of the different religions, you can look at them in a completely different way, right? You can understand them, right? Because you can understand them from somebody that's experienced that which is beyond words, and you can see what they're trying to say, but they never successfully actually say it. You see what I'm saying? Because it's impossible. It's not that they're bad at it. It's not that they did a bad job. It's just that they're trying to do something which is impossible. You're trying to put something into words which is beyond words. You're trying to put God into words. You're trying to put a name on the infinite, right? Which is in some way kind of like a sacrilegious thing. To try to name the infinite is to essentially be attributing the highest of the high to something that is not the highest of the high, because anything that you can put into words is not the highest of the high, right? And so it doesn't really matter what religion that you follow. Like, some are better than others, of course, at doing what they say that they're trying to do, but that doesn't mean that the other ones aren't doing what they were created and meant to do, right? Like, for example, Buddhism is very good at bringing people to a state of realization, right? Which is a good thing to do. Versus like Christianity, for example, tends to subjugate people who are uninitiated, right? But for somebody who's fully initiated and wants to walk the path of Jesus instead of living by Jesus's teachings, it's going to have a completely different effect, right? So it's a, you know, one is like a slave religion that keeps most people down, but can be used as an alchemical text for the initiated. The other is an actual path to self-realization. You see what I'm saying? So, but there's all types of religions. There's many different ways. Like, my personal favorite is Taoism, right? Because Taoism is a religion that's been, instead of expanding and using it for control and using it for all these different things, or like, I really like yoga, but yoga is like a science of religion. It's like going into the really deep details, right? Right? But Taoism is like the purest form. It's like the most refined version. It's like taking everything that's not necessary for the experience, everything that's not necessary to initiate you, and to giving you the most direct path to realization. And that's why it's called Tao, because Tao means path or road or way. It's the direct way, the universal way, right? And so instead of having more, bigger book, more words, when we know that words don't do shit, it's refined down into something you can read in a single day, right? So, you know, if I was going to refine it even smaller, I think you could actually refine, like Tao Te Ching is their main text. You could actually refine that even smaller, right? And that's where we arrive at the 7 deadly sins and the 7 godly virtues. Now, I don't know where that originated from. I think it's probably like a Gnostic thing. But by avoiding the 7 deadly sins, right, and embracing the 7 godly virtues, which is essentially what Tao Te Ching is all about. It's poetry to teach you, you know what I'm saying, the mechanics of doing those things. That's how you initiate. By purifying your body and purifying your mind and embodying virtue, right? And now virtue is not to be confused with morality. Morality is something that we use to fight the ego, right? To stop, to take power away from the ego. So you create your moral code, right? And you don't deviate from that moral code. Your moral code is a set of rules, of laws, which is kind of something like the Bible and other religions kind of try to help you do. They try to give you a moral code, which is good, because not everybody has they don't have the mental capacity to create their own moral code, right? So some people have to be given that by like religion or something, right? And that's okay. But it's always better to make your own, right? To live by your own moral code, to your own laws of morality, right? And those laws of morality are put into place so that when your ego starts doing what egos do and you know, being the little devil on your shoulder, that you already have a designed way that you're going to operate no matter what that little voice in your head says, right? And so I don't know if I'm anti-religious or if I'm really just kind of like an omnist. Like I do see truth in all religions, but I also see the short failings of all religions. And I also see a huge mistake in basically what almost every prophet has ever done based upon how their teachings were used over the course of the long term. I think the best of the best that we commonly know, I mean, I still am partial to Lao Tzu because he didn't try, like he didn't do enough. He resisted creating a religion, and I still wouldn't even consider Taoism a religion, but more of a philosophy. I would say aside from that, of the really well-known ones, I would say the Buddha did the best job. But still, many Buddhists have been killed because they didn't listen to the Buddha, and they created a religion and to where they're worshiping the Buddha, which is exactly what the Buddha told them not to do. So he proved that no matter what you tell people, doesn't mean that they're going to listen to you, that over the course of the long term, they're still going to make a religion about you, and it's still going to cause pain and suffering beyond belief, right? I don't really doubt that he meant to make a religion either, but nonetheless, they used his teachings in the most horrible way possible and created the most horrible religion behind his teachings. And then, of course, you know, Islam, tons of violence. I don't know if Muhammad, I never read the Quran. I don't know if he really preached that you should kill non-Muslims and stuff like that. But if he did, then he was way, 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 way off target, because that is totally unacceptable. So I don't know if there's any other religions that I'm missing. Of course, there's Gnostic teachings and esoteric stuff like Hermeticism and, you know, so on and so forth. But all in all, there's truth in all the religions, but there's also mistakes and things that have led to tremendous suffering in all the religions as well. Be that suffering other people because of the people following the religion, or be that suffering the people following the religion itself because of what other people did to them. You see what I'm saying? Kalalalal says, religion and spirituality are different in my opinion. Yeah, and totally. Spirituality is self-realization. It's the path to experiencing the divine yourself through whatever methods, right? It's kind of a broader spectrum thing. Religion is the adherence to one person's or one group of people's teachings or prescriptions. So basically, religion is following the experiences of another person as your path to the divine, which is always a mistake because you're not that person. You're not Jesus. You're not Buddha. You're not Muhammad. And their way that they realized the divine was through spirituality. It wasn't through their own teachings. That was their experience. But nobody taught them that. They were following their own path. They were following the Tao. Right? But is that same path going to work for you? Probably not. That same path is probably going to fill your head with a bunch of stuff about what you think that it should be like, instead of allowing you to simply experience what it's like. You see what I'm saying? Sean Paul says, Cod, do you think he is at full consciousness? I don't think so. Reading his face. All this teaching is false if the person himself couldn't control his senses. There are multiple things I could count. Well, please share, Sean Paul. Kawabunga says, who is running this evil adult industry screwing life of young men and women? Are globalists behind it too? Like some Illuminati shit? Who fucking knows? You know what I'm saying? Like, I was in prison and I wanted to get laid. seemed like a good place to make some money. I was very successful with it, and I learned a lot. But is it something that I'm super proud of? No, it's not. But did some evil thing beyond my own lust and desire cause me to go into that? My own greed? No. Even I could even go as far as to say it was simply just my own logic and ability for higher thought, because it seemed like a really obvious choice to me, and my entry and success there was quite rapid and worked perfectly. So I did that to myself. It wasn't some Illuminati thing beyond the fact that it existed and was an option. It seemed like an obvious option to me. Does that mean that, you know, the people that are controlling the free websites and so on and so forth couldn't possibly be some type of, you know, dark entity that's manipulating the masses to waste their vital essence and, you know, promote things that are harmful and keep people enslaved mentally and physically and so on and so forth, or potentially to preserve attractive portions of the population while they're depopulating everything else so that in future generations that the human race might be more attractive? Who knows? It could be like that. We don't really know. Sean Paul continues to say he's seen multiple spiritual leaders like that. Beware, and Care says, the mere soul that forces you growth. Yes, and he's talking about the twin flames that we were talking about earlier, and whether or not that exists in only a single person or that it's just a certain type of person which does trigger that awakening, I can't really say, but nonetheless, it does exist. Let's see. Sheila Muse says, thank you for that perfect definition. You're very welcome. Ethos is asking what my religion is as well, and I already answered that. I don't have a religion. Kalalala says, Sean, so frequency only transfers when the vibrations match. You may not agree with everything he's saying, but what I've heard in this stream so far, he's been dead on with how I see the world. Well said. Kalalas continues to say, does it make us right? Who is right? What is right? Why are humans so special? We create meaning, and I think people assume spiritual folk are non-sinners. We all screw up. It's what teaches us. Religion is for... Oh, whoops. 1 second. Religion is for people who are afraid to go to hell. Spirituality is for folks who went to hell and found their light. Sorry for spamming the chat. It's okay, Kalala. It was a great comment. I think I'm really happy that you found our chat, and I think you're honestly a really, really, really good addition to this group. So thank you so much for being here. Sean Paul says, don't make science to philosophy. What you get those hearing people who are unhappy really gone into this. Think about it once. We can agree to disagree. I think that there's no problem with relating science and philosophy, and I actually think that that's a sign, the merger of those two things, when those two things meet, is when we can, is a strong indicator that we're on the right track, right? The moment that science and philosophy separate is a sign of division, and it's a sign of the success of those who wish to divide and conquer us as a people. You see what I'm saying? You see, science really is just another religion because it's not the whole truth. It's a partial truth, right? And the powers that be, right, are holding back a tremendous amount of data and are forcing people with lesser sources to do their own research, and they're propagating certain parts of that research, not the whole story. So you see, science is a partial truth based upon data that changes, right? So what is a partial truth that changes based upon data changing and that's passed off as absolute truth? Well, it's a manipulation. It's a very clever lie, right? Some people just lie blatantly. They just say whatever, blah, 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 blah. But more manipulative, advanced liars use a partial truth so that it makes sense to people with a lower ability for intellectual thought, right? So the moment that science and philosophy deviate from each other, right, it's a sign of inaccuracy, right? Because all things exist in contrast. The worst part of the worst, most, I'm just saying the worst, but the most damaging part of the population are the people with like 120 IQ, for fucking lack of a better term, right? That they think they're so smart because they're smarter than the average bear, but their ability to comprehend things that people on the higher end of the spectrum, the 140, 150, 160, 190 range, they're like little children to them. You see what I'm saying? And so they cause a lot of damage because they're kind of more spot on. But if you've ever seen like those memes all the time where it's got the bell curve, right? And it's got the kind of like, you know, more basic people, and the more super advanced people are usually in agreement. Because if your intelligence goes to a high enough level, it leads to what like the Chinese describe, or Taoism describes as Wu Wei, effortless action, achieving more by doing less, right? And that's a philosophical thing, but that's a philosophical thing that can be applied to scientific concepts as well. So Mia says, I've had the biggest crush on you since I was in high school. I'm 28 now, by the way. Well, I'm happy to know that you've managed to continue existing for the last 10 years, and that you are bringing positive vibes to me, and I appreciate you tremendously. I'm glad you're still here after all these times, and I'm glad also that you've stuck around long enough to hear me speak on this part of my life and this part of my understandings and findings, rather than just whatever I was doing 10 years ago. So it's amazing how balance is always achieved, right? Because 10 years ago, you're probably getting a pretty bad impression from me, even if you thought it was a positive one, but I was probably making a bad impression upon you. And now your consistency is paying off because you're coming into this part of my life and you're getting to benefit from my more recent understandings. So thank you so much for your consistency, Mimua. You're very welcome here as well. Sean Paul says, question to streamer. Seems like Sanasi of Osho. Well, you know, I haven't read that much of Osho stuff, though. I did read Osho's book called The Tao. That was my first introduction to Tao. And I highly recommend that book to anyone else. I haven't read that much other stuff from Osho, but you know what? I'm getting more interested on it based upon what you just said. So thank you so much for that, Sean Paul. Kalalalala says, science is starting to loop back into spirituality at the moment, especially with quantum mechanics, particle physics. We help co-create the universe. We quantum entangle with each other, such as a way. Amen to that. It's beautiful how that happens. Man, what's also interesting is, like, you know, Hinduism and things like figured this out 5,000 years ago, and everyone's acting like it's like some great discovery or whatever, but it's like, you know, no doubt that also is a remnant of something that was discovered even long before that. But it is obvious, I hate to dive into the conspiracy thing, but I think it's fairly obvious that we're living in a situation where we're kind of looped and history's being reset over and over and over again. And really most things that we're suddenly discovering have already been known for 15,000 years or so, or maybe even much longer than that. And really, something horrible happened about 400 or 500 years ago, where civilization was pretty much destroyed and then spoon-fed back, you know, our information to us little by little, and they kind of reenacted this whole sudden growth of technology and all these things. But I don't want to get too deep on that because we're having a really nice spiritual conversation. I don't want to go down the darker conspiratorial side of things, but definitely be careful believing whatever you read on the internet, and your science and all that, because you know, it's a thing. But yes, you know, in the very same way that they've proven that a particle behaves differently when it's being observed and not being observed, is the same truth of all things. Like, it's proof of Maya, right? Of the illusion that we're living in. It simply doesn't exist unless it's being observed. And so our power of observation is very powerful, right? We are as above, so below. Like, we are creating the very reality based upon what we think reality is. It's a group manifestation, right? And so it very much is true that if we want to help others and help the world, the greatest thing that we can do towards that endeavor is to better ourselves and to better our mind and to better our thoughts, right? Because you don't get, like, I hate to break it to people, but there is no such thing as praying. You don't get to pick and choose which of your thoughts make it to God. Every single thought in your head is a prayer, be it good or be it bad. You are simply one of the many, 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 many egos of God. You see what I'm saying? You're just a thought in God's head, right? And the moment you stop being a thought in God's head, you will cease to exist. Now, the question is, are you the angel on God's shoulder or the devil on God's shoulder, right? So in the same way that we hope that you operate, right, that you ignore the devil, your ego, right, and you embrace the teachings of the angel, your guru, right? God operates the same way, but on a much, much, much grander scale, infinitely grander scale, right? So if you are having negative thoughts and you're being the little devil, little ego on God's shoulder, what is God doing, being the almighty being that God is? God is ignoring you, right? You're being ignored. And what happens if you're the angel, speaking tremendous wisdom and giving tremendously positive thoughts and having great ideas about how to turn this very complex simulation into something positive that can make higher consciousness? Well, God's listening to you. And then what happens if God's listening to you? Well, you're manifesting. You become a manifester. You become a co-creator with God, right? And so you don't get to pray. You don't get to pick and choose the moment to say, okay, at this moment, I'm going to have a little chat with God. What's a really good idea is to stop doing anything and listen to God, which is meditation. You see what I'm saying? And sorry, you guys, I didn't mean to be like, sound condescending for a moment, but this is just like a topic that gets me kind of like in that moment. So anyways, but yes, be positive being all the time, not just outwardly. Like, if you can't say nothing nice, don't say nothing at all. But it doesn't just stop there. If you can't think nothing nice, don't think nothing at all either, right? Because every thought in your head is a prayer. Let's see. Kalala says it helps render reality as we know it. Okay, that's it. I'm going to stop typing, but I hope that helps. Bruce will explain it better, I'm sure. You're doing an amazing job. Honestly, you should really consider doing a stream also. I think that you are very spot on. I think you would be good at this Wisdom is Mine says, but most religion misuse God's name and make money out of it. So this is basically a big scam. The religion itself made for purpose, but only Christ made a difference in all religion. Well, you were on point for a moment until you said, but only Christ made a difference in all religion, when Christianity itself is probably the most guilty of all religions of exactly what you just said at the beginning of that statement. Let me read what you said again to clarify for people, because this is really funny how this works. Wisdom is Mine says, but most religions misuse God's name and make money out of it. This is basically a big scam. Their religion itself made for that purpose. Then he was all right and doing good to that moment. But then he says, but only Christ made a difference in all religions. When you were writing that, did anything about that feel off? Nothing? That felt good? That felt good. You were on like a perfect, you were killing it. You were doing amazing. And then you just fucking took everything that you wrote and you just desecrated it. Do you have any clue like what the church is? Are you aware? Have you ever been to a church? Do you know anything about that at all? Serious question. Anyways, Sean Paul says, again, concept of who made this world and being. Stop at one point. Understanding first definition of God, in which you means otherwise you belong to your own ideology and specific religion. Well, if I was going to give my own ideology and specific religion, we would not be allowed to even say the word God, because the word God itself is simply the description of a being that is immortal and interdimensional. However, there's many layers of consciousness which could be considered godlike, right? Now, if we want to define God as the highest of the high, then that doesn't make any sense at all, because you can't define the highest of the high. It's beyond comprehension. It can only be experienced by being one with that consciousness. And even then, we don't really know if that's the highest of the high, because at the moment that you achieve oneness with your own creator, you become aware that your creator was also created. And so then, is that God? Is God your creator? Or is God your creator's creator? And if your creator has a creator, is it possible that that was also created? And so you see, it always goes up to some level which cannot be described in words, which cannot be comprehended. You see what I'm saying? It's the microcosm versus the macrocosm. And in the same way that you are the microcosm, right? You are essentially an embodiment of awareness. You are an embodiment of pi, right? The indivisible. That which is always moving closer to the center but can never quite get there, right? The infinite number. Downward. And then infinity itself is the infinite macrocosm. It always goes up higher and higher and higher. So this is why that we're able to achieve higher and higher and higher levels of consciousness by realizing, or should I say by erasing, that which we view as the self, right? Because we are all stemming from a singular consciousness, but we're experiencing multiple states of awareness. So the level of consciousness that you are aware of, right, is the level of consciousness which you're able to operate on, right? So the bigger that level, the more aware you are of consciousness, is a direct result of what you're able to comprehend. You see what I'm saying? Film Stock says, Sanatan Dharma is the best in my opinion. Ram Ram. I don't know what Sanatan Dharma is, but thank you for your opinion. And I do agree with the last thing. Ram is a very good syllable. Kalala says, spirituality isn't something taught or bought. It's not something someone hands you. It's internal. I spent so many years searching outside of myself for answers only to realize they were within me. Again, well said. You are just so spot on today. I don't know. Hopefully you're spot on every day. But it's my first time meeting you, and I'm happy I did. Wisdom is Mine says, Hinduism just makes millions for different people interests, which is a pure scam. Well, I don't know. Definitely contains a tremendous amount of truth. I can't really comment. I don't live in India. I don't really know in what ways that truth is being abused by the lesser states of awareness, which we call humans. But it does seem to be a reoccurring problem with religion in general. So I'm not going to say that you're wrong. Noise says, religion is for people afraid to go to hell. Sorry, I don't agree with that statement. I mean, I would say that I somewhat agree with the statement myself, and of course, we're all allowed to agree or disagree. There's also the polar opposite of that side. It's also for people that desire to go to heaven. But in my own understanding and experience as someone who's remembered many, many past lives and has an inside knowledge of the cycle of rebirth and suffering, I think that the concept of heaven and hell itself is a manipulation and is untrue altogether. That heaven and hell can exist right here on earth itself, and that it's a product of rebirth. You can be reborn in a hellish situation, or you could be reborn in a heavenly situation. But no matter how heavenly and how good your situation becomes, it will never be better than the end of the cycle, than collapsing the cycle of rebirth altogether and escaping the matrix of suffering, which is probably could be comparably heaven in some way, but I don't know that I would necessarily describe it like that, because it's possible that the higher consciousness that we stem from, God for lack of a better word, might be going through their own trials and tribulations of some sort on a grand scale beyond our comprehension, because otherwise, why else would they be putting themselves through this refinement process that requires so much suffering? Or the bigger question is it possible that they are not even putting themselves through this refinement process of suffering, but rather that an even greater consciousness has designated them to this experience, and they just happen to love it. Just love it. Just love the cycle of suffering. So we can all agree to disagree, or agree, or to simply try not to think about anything and instead experience consciousness on the greatest scale that we possibly can through expanding our awareness. Kalala says, the deeper inward you go, the more you expand outward consciously. Well said. Alex Rami says, what's up, my brother? What's up, my brother? You too. Kalala says, just different points of view, Sean, and all points of view are subjectively correct. What would scare you is someone telling you what to believe. You give your power away like that. And I think that's also well said. Don't tell. Belief itself, not only is someone telling you what to believe a scary thought, but I would consider belief, the word belief, to be one of the dirtier words in existence. Not that dirty and clean really exist, except for in contrast to each other. But of all the words that English has come up with, I would put belief in the same category of potential as kind of desperate and very depressing words because they are unrealized, right? To say something has potential means that it's not achieved that their maximum. It's not achieved that potential, right? In the same way that belief means that you don't know. And in reality, you should know, right? If you don't know, it's because of the belief. The belief is not helping you to know. The belief is what's holding you back from knowing. Wisdom is mine continues to say, Buddhism is another fraud because you won't become God without knowing. WRF certain is without having real experience by just doing meditation. Empty mind is delusional. Wisdom comes from experience. That's actually completely wrong. I must disagree wholeheartedly with the latter part of that thing, actually with the entire statement, because wisdom doesn't come from experience. Wisdom comes from union with the divine. There's a word in Greek called gnosis, Gnosis, right? There's also a word that means something very similar in Sanskrit called jnana, Jnana, right? But the best way that we can probably say it in English is direct knowledge, or like what they call in Kabbalah, the Akashic records, right? And so wisdom only comes from direct knowledge, right? And direct knowledge comes from union with the divine. It doesn't come from experience at all, except for the experience of finding union with the divine. Through the experience of oneness, one can become wise. But through your own life experiences as a limited human that's experiencing a limited state of awareness, you can never achieve wisdom like that. You see what I'm saying? You must experience oneness with the divine, which is only through meditation, right? So, that's my take on that. Now, I could be possibly reading what you're saying wrong, slightly wrong. And perhaps you're saying that you can find that through meditation, in which case I do agree. But the way that I'm interpreting what you wrote, I would say that yes, that wisdom comes from union with the divine. Gnosis. Kala says, real knowledge shows you how to stand alone, not become dependent. Rihanna says, are you a shaman? Well, the thing is that you could look at it like that. In some cultures or some language, you might call me that. There's a lot of different words for different things. The thing is when we use words, like for example in Vedic thought, they say there's 4 types of communication, right? The highest being, oneness with the absolute, right? And the lowest being spoken word. And the reason why spoken word is the lowest form of communication, right, is because it's dependent upon someone else's understanding. Like the second lowest form is the thoughts that happen in your own head. The reason why that's a higher form of communication is because you understand your own thoughts. You see what I'm saying? Now, I can say the same words to one person, and I can say the same words to another person. And I can say the same words to another person. And maybe I say words to one person, they're on my same wavelength. They understand exactly what I'm saying. Now I say the same words to another person. They're not on my wavelength. They completely misunderstand me. They might be even offended, right? Now I can say them to another person that doesn't even speak my language, and it just sounds like I'm talking fucking gibberish to them. It's just like, blah, 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 right? So words are pretty much totally dependent upon the listener, not the speaker. You see what I'm saying? So this is the problem with trying to teach through words. A better way to teach is through direct transmission. You see what I'm saying? As they say in the Tao, few can aspire to teaching without words, but that doesn't mean that some can't aspire to that, and that would definitely be a better way of going about it. But sadly, right now, I'm limited to words because I'm using the internet to try and convey something, right? Rather than being personally present and able to transmit directly. Film Stock says Hinduism is best if you understand. And I am honestly a huge fan of Hinduism. I think that it very well describes the situation. But it is highly misconstrued, and it's very deeply hated upon by other religions. And so I don't talk about it that much because I feel like it's better to try and convey thoughts in a way that people don't automatically reject because of the title that we gave it. But I would agree that Hinduism is a better religion than most, or basically any Western religion, personally, in my own opinion. But again, it requires a certain level of understanding that comes from experience rather than from scripture. Wisdom is Mind says, God is real as far as uncertainty says. Wisdom is Mind continues to say, Buddha is pure scam. I disagree, but that's okay. You can definitely remain as closed-minded as you want it. Lone Wolf says Christ is king, and Wisdom is Mind says, yes, Christ is only very close to certainty of God. Film Stock says Sanatan Dharma. Noi Ibrahim says you should try to read the Quran. Lone Wolf says repent and read the gospel. Kalala says the Bible was written 300 years after Jesus died by the very people he was speaking out against. That's true. That's true. When you're right, I guess. Divine Operator says, I'm Divine Operator. Benjamin says, which Christian Jesus Krishna monotheistic repetition as a control mechanism to make a new army or legion? And you will notice that basically all, messianic religions are very close together in the story and the way that they're told. They also all kind of very closely relate to like Egyptian religion. And I think that those mirrors either indicate multiple different people in different areas of the world that followed the same tantra, for lack of a better word, towards realization, towards achieving realization, or they were simply rebranded over and over and over again as a tool for control by the people that are trying to enslave people mentally, and that it was the most useful way of doing that until very recently when they invented this very device that we're talking on right now, and they were able to enslave people mentally with an even more powerful technological achievement, such as the phone and the internet. you know, because it really is hard to enslave a large population using chains and whips and violence, because eventually they uprise and so on and forth. But if people can't see the cage, they can't see the bars, they can't see the chains, it becomes much easier to enslave them mentally, right? And you can control a much larger body of people like that. Roberto Garcia, super chat. Thank you so much for skipping the line, doing a super chat. He said, "What's up, Bruce? A lot of things you say make sense to me. Of course, our thoughts and understanding vary by person. Glad to see this side of you." Subbed. Thank you so much for subbing, Robert. I appreciate you. I appreciate the appreciation, and I also appreciate you using the super chat function. You guys, it makes it a lot easier to have a direct conversation if you use this feature, because I do try to read the chat in chronological order, unless it's a super chat, and then it pops up at the bottom of my screen and I'm able to get the comment in real time. So thank you so much, Roberto. Appreciate you. Andrew Ferrier says, if souls are real, how come after a small lobotomy, when returning to a tribesman to their tribe, do people think that the lobotomized person had their soul taken? This is such garbage. I don't really see how this is relevant to anything. Like, if you, like, why are we referring to tribesmen? Like, when did the tribesmen have come into this, right? And why are we lobotomizing people? I don't understand, Andrew. But you know what I'm saying? Anything is garbage if you want it to be garbage. If you close your mind enough and you pick and choose certain parts of things that you want to believe, and that you're unwilling to have a flexible state of awareness to bring in more of what you think, but rather that you just want to be in conflict with anything that anyone else says that's whatever, and you want to work with a very, very narrow and small-minded example, like what happens when somebody's lobotomized, which is very rare and doesn't really happen that much, and you want to talk about the most primitive people available and what they think about someone being lobotomized, it's like a completely irrelevant argument. So I would consider possibly expanding your awareness. Peter Griffin says, big fan, bro. Are you retired? I'm like semi-retired. But if you guys share this streams and this channel with other people, you can help me become more retired, because this is what we're trying to do right now, and we're kind of minimizing on everything else. And I think that this is a far more positive endeavor, though I will say, even in my past endeavors, I've always tried to operate with a certain level of unconditional love, which is also what I'm trying to do here. So in some ways, it's the same. It's just a different method in which I'm showing people how to operate. Wisdom is Mine says, there are no comparison of Christ with any shits who claim to be God, because none are certain but purely stupid in many cases. But you can say the same thing about the Bible and about the New Testament. You know what I'm saying? It's just written by the Jews. The Jews don't even follow the New Testament. They follow the Old Testament, right? Jesus spoke against the Jews. They killed him. And then they gave you the Bible. They wrote the Bible. And then now you follow it like a good little slave. You are compromised. That your ability to use discernment and logical reasoning is compromised by dogma. You understand? And it's not anything against I'm not saying it's all the Jews or whatever I'm saying, but the ones that were in control, that, you know, brought down Rome and all that back in the day, that's what they did. And you are still falling for it 1,500 years later or something. So Benjamin says, there's a lot more people that how they have made money in the past. I'm not sure what we're talking about there, but it was a comment. Wisdom is Mine says, but it is very important to analysis so-called God, including laws and physics. Okay, well, you're welcome to your opinion. Funny Shows says, you're Illuminati. You think I'm Illuminati? Okay, possibly. You would never know. You would never know. I don't know if this is what Illuminati does, though. I feel like it's different. Filmstock says, do some research about Sanatan Dharma. You will be so happy to learn about it. And I will definitely, you know, I'm even going to screenshot that so I remember what it's called. Because I'm really super into it. I discovered this teaching recently. I found a lot of good stuff in Hinduism or I really like it as a religion. My favorite thing is called the Vairaj Bhairava Tantra. I'm probably saying the Vajraj part wrong. Vairani. It's the 112 meditation techniques of Shiva, and I loved it. I love it. I keep reading it over and over again in the last like week or so because I've had several experiences that led to a much higher state of consciousness in which I've seen in those 112 ways, of course, thinking I've only maybe achieved like, you know, 5 or 6 of them, but where that was exactly how I did it. And I'm going, and my question is, I'm like going, do you just need like a few ways to get there? Or does that mean there's like actually 112 levels of consciousness, right? So that's my question. But I really am super into that Tantra. It's like one of my favorite things that I've read recently. And this guy is like really into this Illuminati thing. Kalala says, you live in an eternal now. You're meant to make this eternal now into heaven. Don't wait until after death. Death is when you remember you were everything to begin with. You're so good. Kalala. You know what? We're going to be friends. I can already tell we're going to be friends. We're just like, we're doing well right now. I haven't seen you say one thing that I disagreed with. As a matter of fact, I'm feeding off of this. It's a really good like exchange of energy. I really like that. Thank you for being here. Fire Tiger Leo Queen says, thank you for all you do for us. Appreciate you and all the knowledge you drop on us. And I am so happy to do it. You know what? Sometimes I get discouraged and I think about not doing these streams anymore and just retreating into the, you know, back into my hermitage and spending time in silence. And I might end up doing that in the near future. But I'll always be back for you guys with whatever I come up with because I love you. We got another super chat. Roberto Garcia is back. Thank you again, sir. He says, I was born and baptized in a Catholic home, but I have no problem attending any church besides Catholic. Am I wrong for that? I'm a big fan of yours, Big Dog. No, you're not wrong for that. And even if you, I mean, to be honest, I love going to spaces like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't consider myself any religion myself, but keeping spiritual company and religious people can vary on their level of, you know, spiritual connection. Not just because someone's at church does definitely not mean that they're connected or realized or a spiritual person, but you are more likely to find people there. Like even in the most desolate places, like, you know, there. You know what I'm saying? Like even if you were to go to a Catholic church or some other, you know, place, you will find realized people. You know what I'm saying? The way that they communicate their realization will be different. It might go through the lens and through the lingo of whatever place that you're with. You know what I'm saying? But you will know somebody when they're speaking from a place of unconditional love, which is the number one sign that somebody has realized the divine in some way, right? They're always going to be speaking through a place of unconditional love, right? And you're going to see that glow about them. And I agree, keep spiritual company, right? If you go and put yourself around low vibers, it's a test. It's a test that you can do for yourself, right? And if you go put yourself around high vibers and spiritual people, it's a tool for raising your own thing. Now, if you want to go on the testing side and do a little darkness, you know, a little shadow work, you can definitely go into negative situations and try to hold your frequency, because that's what being a healer is all about. You want to become a healer for other people, then you go outside of that sphere and you hold your vibration no matter what's going on around you, right? And when the moment that you can hold your vibration while other people are vibing low, you become a healer, because they're going to start resonating with you. They can't help it. It's going to raise their vibration. Now, on the other side of it, you can also go into spiritual spaces, go around, stuff like that. In some of those buildings, even, they have like acoustics, and like the older cathedrals and stuff, there's like esoteric stuff built into the walls with the organs and the murals on the ceilings and the stained glass and all that. And that can help bring you up. So I highly support what you're doing. I think it's a great thing. If you don't like Catholic Church, it's all good. It doesn't matter that you're baptized. Has zero whatever. That's just a mind fuck control thing that they played on you to make you think that you have to be some kind of way. In the same way that they, you know, set all these things up in esoteric ways with vibrations bouncing off the walls and the cathedrals and all that, and then you awaken and all of a sudden you look up and you see this mural of Jesus and and you go, oh, it's Jesus. You know what I'm saying? There is some manipulation tactics going on there, but there will be realized people there as well. We got another super chat. Thank you so much, Mountain Spirit Gal. She says, streams are the reason I've been trying to have a similar experience to yours while driving back from Vegas. It's amazing what you share with us. Thank you so much for sharing that as well, Mountain Spring Gal. I will take this moment to tell other people what that was that you're talking about. So my initial enlightenment came very unexpectedly. I had watched a video from Sadhguru, who I was following because of the Save Soil movement. It wasn't really because of any kind of spiritual interest, but I was following him, and I seen a video about how to do the Om. And when I say the Om, I mean this. That, right? So I was driving from LA to Vegas one day. I was passing through Death Valley, and I had already been chanting. I started chanting in Rancho Cucamonga, and I was chanting for maybe an hour and a half, something. I don't know. I don't have no clue how long, but I was chanting consistently the whole time, and I was just feeling the vibrations of this chant of the Om, right? And as I'm chanting, I'm driving through Death Valley, right? And it's weird how, like, it's kind of like, you know, this weird thing with like deserts and stuff, you know what I mean? Like Jesus became realized in the desert, Muhammad became realized in the desert. So many things happened in the desert. I think I'm pretty sure something happened with Moses in the desert. There's a weird thing with deserts, right? And so I'm driving through Death Valley, right? The Valley of Death, right? And I'm chanting. And all of a sudden, as I'm driving, keep in mind, I'm just going to set the stage for you. I got the windows down. I'm in my van. The dog's next to me. It's dark, right? It's about 11:30 at night. The wind's whipping, you know what I'm saying? It's desert winds. It's in September. This was September 11th. Wind's whipping through my car. My hair's going everywhere. I'm chanting. You know what I'm saying? Boom, 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 chanting, right? I'm feeling the vibration. Now, like, my ears start popping, right? And all of a sudden, my vision, like, starts, like, casting out. And I'm reading license plates that are, like, miles ahead of me in the dark. Like, as if, not as if they came close to me, like a zoom camera, but as if I went close to them. Like, I jumped out of my body and was, like, looking at it up close, right? And I'm, like, going, what the fuck? I had no clue. I didn't know what a city was. I didn't know anything like that. But all of a sudden, I'm, like, casting out my vision. And it was, like, I had total control of it. I'm, like, what the fuck? I can do this on purpose. I'm, like, I'm throwing out my vision. I'm bringing it back. I'm throwing it out. I'm doing it absolute control. Right? So I'm chanting. I keep chanting. I'm like, wow, I just unlocked superpowers. I don't know what's happening, but this is amazing. I got eagle eyes. This is awesome, right? And then all of a sudden, I start hearing this little, like, sound, like this little twinkle, right? And it starts getting louder and louder, and it's, like, vibrating my whole car. My whole van is vibrating, right? And I realize as it gets louder and louder, I start realizing it's harps. It sounds like angels playing harps, right? It gets louder and louder and louder until it's like a whole symphony of harps, like thousands of harps, angels playing harps. And I remember it was playing at like 3 different octaves. Like, it was like it's playing the same song, same melody, but like offbeat by like 3 different, like it was like 3 different symphonies playing at a slightly different like timing. Like wah, 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 wah with the harps, right? And I'm going, and all of a sudden, so keep in mind, I'm driving. I'm still looking through my other eyes, but my third eye, for lack of a better term, opens, right? And inside my mind, I can see something that is the most HD thing I've ever seen. Like, more real than the real life, more real than whatever I can see in my real life. Like, I'm immersed inside a gold tunnel of light, right? Spinning light, like a vortex of light, and it's like whipping out like ribbons of light at me while I'm going through like a vortex, right? And I feel, at the same time that I'm seeing this in my mind's eye while I'm chanting, I feel this light. I can feel it as well, and it came into the back of my head, right? The Bindu chakra, right? I reverse engineered this, so I got the terminology. At the time, I didn't know what the hell was going on, so comes into the back of my head and it beams down my spine, right? And keep in mind, this is the most pleasurable experience. It's like 1,000 orgasms at once, coming in through the back of my head, down my spine, into my testicles. And then I felt it raise up, and it gave me this feeling in my heart as it passed through my heart, up through my throat, and out of my eyes and my mouth. And I could feel the warmth in my mouth, right? And I look in the rearview mirror, and there's gold light shooting out of my eyes and my mouth, right? And then I look around, and like lasers coming out of my, like there's a light inside my body, right? And I look around, and the whole car is lit up. The whole van's lit up like the sun came out with gold light, right? It's just this whole gold light is just radiating off of me, right? There's gold sparkles just like twinkling around. It's literally just like in the movies or something, like when someone dies. It's got the angels playing the harps, the gold light, the gold sparkles, the beam of light, all that stuff. I could tell the dog could see it. He's looking at me like eyes all wide and crazy, and I thought I was dying. I was like, adios amigo, I gotta go. And I never thought that dying would be so good. I was so happy. I was like, yes, this is it. I was like, I didn't know it was gonna be this good, but here we go. Boom. And then all of a sudden, this tremendous download of information about the universe and what it is, and that it's a hologram, and that it's all created from light and sound, and, you know, this whole history of the universe, that I existed before this body, that I will continue to exist after this body, right? And then all of a sudden I could hear an angel speaking to me, and she's like, don't be afraid, right? And I'm like, who are you? She's like, don't worry, I banished your demon. I'm like, what do you mean you banished my demon? Like, it's crazy, right? And then that's like, it was like silence in my mind afterwards, but she's just there. She was there for like 6 weeks, just like explaining everything to me, right? Explaining to me that I was here because I was, you know, it was kind of like a punishment kind of situation, but that I can finally go home after this, that this is going to be my last life. I didn't even know about reincarnation. I didn't even know that escaping the simulation was a thing. I didn't know none of that. But then I reverse engineered it all, going into theology and this, that, and the other. And it all like ties back into like Hinduism, kind of yoga, you know, moksha, release from the cycle of suffering, Buddhism, so on and so forth. All the things that was told to me by the angel. It's all the same things that was in a lot of these Eastern religions. So that's what Mountain Spirit Girl was talking about. You guys can thank Mountain Spirit Girl for her super chat for that story. And then many other things happened after that. But that was my enlightenment moment on September 11th, 2023. Anyways, so back to it. Wisdom Mind says vibration and frequency are stupid ways of defining God as energy and sacred consciousness. Okay, blah, 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 blah. You're kind of a boring chatter, to be honest. Sogo Hotel says, you know, I'm going to bring you back. My mod hid you, but I'm unhiding you. Sogo Hotel, you're welcome to worship whatever you want. Sogo Hotel says, I worship Satan, but I get a lot of hate, unfortunately. And why do you think that is? What, can you explain to us, elaborate on the benefits that you've gotten from worshiping Satan? Because we are curious. We're always here to learn. This is a learning experience. Like, I'm sorry my mod blocked you for a minute, but I'm not any more against you for worshiping Satan than I am for Wisdom is Mine worshiping Jesus. Let me just clarify that. Wisdom is Mine says, by blending science and philosophy, we reveal that both human and natural laws lack absolute certainty. Ultimately, while worldly knowledge constantly changes, only God remains certain. Well, that was one of the better things that you've said, I guess. Yeah, I guess I can't really say much about that, but that was his comment. Red Pill says, simulation theory, DMT laser, C code on everything. People say the exact same visuals, prove in living room, same scene script, growing subculture, YouTube, Danny Go. Okay, yeah, I think I've seen something about that. Wisdom is Mine says, Satan is uncertain like human law and human science, but God only is certain. Well, I guess it depends on your definition of God. I think that when we talk about the central consciousness that everything emanates from, right, that would include all other consciousnesses, both human, demonic, and angelic alike. So it really just depends on your definition of God, of whether or not that's an accurate statement. Just Dust says, true awakening is not found in ego dissolution, self-realization, or hidden spiritual paths. Real awakening comes through Jesus alone, the way, the truth, and the life, and only Jesus saves. And I couldn't disagree with you more. I think that the falsest teaching that anyone could ever give would just say that there's only one path to awakening. And so I am sorry, but you could never truly awaken if that's the teaching that you embrace, because you have closed yourself to the many, 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 many paths. And there's many levels of consciousness. And even if you achieve some level of consciousness through Jesus, his teachings, you will never attain the highest of the high through a single thought that bars other levels of thought. Sogo Hotel says, but better to worship Satan than to worship nothing at all. I would disagree with that. I don't think that the highest of the high requires worship. You see, you couldn't exist without it. It doesn't require your worship, right? It simply is a state of awareness which encompasses all things, right? Both good and evil. You see, I had another experience after this whole light thing I talked about, where I became very large, right? It wasn't like I left my body, but rather that I became huge. And I looked down and I could see the earth, right? And it was so small, it was like a little thing that I could hold in my hands. And I loved it. I loved it more than I ever loved anything in my entire life. And when I looked down at it, I could see through every single person's eyes simultaneously. I could see everything that was happening in the world simultaneously. And it was some of the things were so beautiful. I got to experience things like childbirth and things that I could never experience as a man. I also got to experience horrific things, right? Things that I don't even want to talk about, right? And I got to see it all from the first person view and to feel it and to feel the emotions attached to it, right? And it was both good and evil, both. So many different things, so much suffering, but also so much love and so much beauty at the same time, right? And as I'm looking through every single person's eyes simultaneously, all I could do, regardless of the ugly, regardless of the good, regardless of all the full spectrum of humanity, is all I could do was feel the most intense state of love that was like, it was the most purest state of ecstasy that I could ever, that beyond imagination, beyond description, right? And that is the love of God, right? So, I forgot why I was talking about that, but, yeah, anyways, that was the story. So, Red Pills says, prior text was an error, simulation theory, DMT, YouTube, Danny Goler. It's not a trip. People draw the exact same letters seen on every surface. Well, I guess that's kind of an interesting thing because, you know, a lot of older teachings and stuff like that, esoteric stuff, talks a lot about runes and things as well, right? I had a dream once that was kind of similar to that, where I seen runes as well. So it's quite an interesting concept, and I don't discredit it. Soho says, how old are you, Bruce? You have very luscious hair. I'm 40 years old. Kiked Media says, the societal collapse 400 to 500 years ago was the Black Plague. Well, I mean, if you want to believe history, then you can believe history. I think that history is a complete and total lie, and I think that, well, some people will be like, sources, trust me, bro. I think that it's very obvious if you watch like modern day news, social media even, where you can see that almost everything is a lie and goes through a certain filter, right? And I think that most likely 400 or 500 years ago was some type of either war or natural event where most of the population was killed and all the technology and everything was destroyed. Maybe it was a flood, maybe it was some type of war, big weapon, a comet, who knows? But that the world was rebuilt, right? And they just gave us this like fake history. Because the Black Plague only happened in Europe. So you see, the world existed outside Europe. So this is, again, like, people like to take a really small example of history based upon the people that are promoting that history. You see what I'm saying? But the world existed 4 or 5 years ago outside of Europe as well. And in fact, a lot of the world was, according to history, flourishing during that time. It was only, the Dark Ages was only going on in Europe after the fall of Rome. You see what I'm saying? So, you know, history was written by the victors, they say, right? So it could have been a war as well. It's really hard to say. Sean Paul says, study Osho once, you get a taste of your life. Join meditation camp or listen to his audiobooks in English. You will feel nice hearing him. He have his comments to every philosopher's from Eve. I will probably definitely take that advice. I think I've what I've seen like on Instagram and stuff, little cuts from Osho's stuff, I really like it. I think Osho's, what I've seen of him, I've always enjoyed. And I really liked that book, Tao, by Osho. Red Pills is going Gnostic on us and says, Archons feed on our negative energy, the synagogue of Satan, Oive. Giuseppe has subscribed to tell us that Neanderthals are still exist, and we, you know what, this wouldn't have been, this stream would have felt weird without a Neanderthal comment, so thank you for subscribing, my friend. Just Dave says, pray without ceasing, and that is a statement. Just Dust says, listening is good, but he knows we are human. He knows we need to talk to him. And you could say that. And Red Pill says Saturn, cube, it's math. And people look at stuff like that. We got a super chat. Let me go ahead and break the timeline. Roberto Garcia, thank you again, says, lately been feeling depressed here and there, and just talk to God and ask him to keep me together, and saying so many bad temptations and won't fall for it. That's a great way to go about it. And you know what? It will give you strength. And you know why? Because the same reason why you nourish your own body, because you're part of it. Everything is God, right? In the same way that you seek to nourish your own cells and your own body, God seeks to nourish you. And so knowing that you want to be better, knowing that you want to resist temptation, he will give you strength, because you are part of him. And so I definitely support this method, because sometimes you gotta, you know, at some point you gotta stop being the observed, and you gotta become the observer, right? You gotta stop being the subject, start being, you know, the observer of that subject, right? And, you know, we're all part of God. The question is, what part of God will you be? You know what I'm saying? We all have different parts of our, different aspects of our body and of ourself, right? And some of those we're more proud of than others, and some we're more ashamed of than others, right? And it's the same relationship between you and God. You see what I'm saying? So be something that God is proud of, and God will be happy to nurture you. YouTuber Max says, how to get out of depressive moods from your perspective? Realize the impermanence of all things. Right? This too shall pass. Right? Everything, we can look at, everything is karma, right? Everything is cause and effect. It's action and result. Right? But the results of any action are based upon time, and time is a construct. Right? So you are looking at the graph of your life, and dips down, and along with the dip comes what you describe as depression, a low vibrational state, right? But you drew the graph. If you end the graph here and you say, okay, this is the end, this is where it ends, this is the results is negative, then you're going to feel negative about your life. All you got to do is just draw that line a little longer and take in a bigger sample of time. And if you really want to go outside the box, you take that and you draw that line way past the expiration of this body, right? You just make that line, you draw a figure 8 at the end, you go infinity. Now you just achieved God, oneness with God. The moment you draw that infinity on there, right? Because you're not limiting yourself to time. The smaller you make the graph, right, the greater your standard of deviation. Life, you know what I'm saying? You want to shrink it down and your graph is going to look like this. It's going to look like chaos. It's going to look like turbulence. But if you stretch time, right, now all of a sudden you got some gentle waves, right? It doesn't seem so bad then. So, you know what I'm saying? Stay in the moment, right? But zoom out. All you have is now. You are in the eternal now. Nothing, the past does not exist. In fact, you don't even remember it accurately. I guarantee it. You forgot 90% of everything that ever happened. Probably 99% of everything that ever happened. If you remember 10% of your life, you're like a fucking genius. All right? You don't remember everything. You're picking and choosing the pieces that you want to take with you, that you're going to use to form your personality. All right? In the future, you think you're going to predict the future? If you should go get on the stock market, start trading and get rich. Think you're going to predict the future? Everyone's been trying to do it forever. You're not going to be right. Even if you get close, it's not going to play out exactly like you thought. Right? And if you are right, then I hate to tell you, you're stuck in a loop. Because life should never be predictable. The worst thing that should ever happen is that everything goes exactly as planned. Because the moment that you make a plan, you set a bar that could have been higher. It could have been better. If you stay in the moment and you put 100% effort into every moment, in the moment that you're operating on, then you take your limited essence of awareness, your limited cognitive functions, and you maximize their potential. Now, you might not know what the future is going to be, but you didn't know anyways. You just thought you did. Your plans were bullshit anyways. It can be so much better than whatever you think that you want to plan. You just put 100% into today, right? And stop looking at everything like suddenly like today is your results. Because your results are a variable. You don't know what your results are. You don't know how long your graph is going to be. If you want to take this lifetime alone as your timeline, you still don't know how long that's going to be. I mean, that's thinking small. What's better is to think in multiple lifetimes. Do as much good as you can do today. Operate with as much love as you can operate with today. And know that one day you're going to have a life where you're going to be like, wow, fuck, I can't even fall on my face. I try to fuck up and I just can't. Life is good, and that's because you killed it in your last life. You did phenomenal. Start working on that today. If you feel like this life's not going wrong, realize that everything that goes wrong for you, every bit of suffering that you endure, you're getting that much closer to it being over. You're working off your bad karma of the past. Be happy to work it off. Be thankful. Approach everything with gratitude. Gratitude is one of the most purest, most powerful emotions that you can possibly experience. Like, find gratitude, find the things that you're thankful from, and hold on to those things You know what I'm saying? Like it's your life raft and you're in the middle of the ocean. Gratitude is your raft. Noise says praying has different meanings for different people. It can. You know, different people speak different languages. You know what I mean? Like one person might call it praying, another person might call it yoga. You know what I'm saying? Just depends how you do it. One person might call it praying, another person might call it meditation. One person might call it praying, another person might call it gratitude. One person might call it praying, one person might call it unconditional love. One person might call it praying. One person might call it fucking neuroscience or affirmations. It's all just fucking words. Tajvaj. That's Hungarian, by the way, for how are you, Hajvaj. Hungarian lesson for the day. But this is why words are just bleh. Red Pill says Christianity is plagiarized, Talmudic trick. And I think that's probably true. Brave, good to see you. Thank you for coming. Red Pill says, we are transceivers in a simulated reality, scientifically proven. You can prove it with your living room with DMT and a laser. You can also prove it by just, you know what I'm saying, paying attention. You don't even need DMT and a laser. In fact, your brain can produce a bigger dose of DMT than you ever get into your body externally. No way. You have to take an MAOI and all this stuff, or if you smoke it, like most of it goes into the air. You could never get as much DMT into your body as what your brain can produce. A human grade, human specific, human perfect match for your receptors. Everything could just right into your body and heal your entire body all at once. If you really want to go and take the divine and try to talk about it and try to fucking stick it through a neuroscientific lens. But is that gonna really, you know what I'm saying? If you want the highest of the high, you purify yourself. You don't fucking smoke TMT in your living room. Sorry. You can do it like that if you need to be convinced. Just Dave's still here preaching. He says, read the gospel, man. Invest some of your time in it. Focus. Ask God for truth with love. I want you to find peace and happiness in Jesus. Focus on the Bible, especially the New Testament Jesus saved. I feel like that would be just so many steps backwards for me. While I do feel that I could probably derive more from the Bible than somebody like you or, you know, most Christians, I don't require it. I don't think that the truth can be put into words, and so I'm not going to look to something that has been not only written in words but translated through multiple different languages and then labeled King James Version on it and call that truth. I'm going to call that bullshit. Sorry. Red Pill says, New Testament was written by man. King James Version. Oh, you took the words I'm out. King James Version was in an occultist. All these words were by people of limited vocabulary. Prove yourself with DMT and a laser search. You were on such a good track there until the DMT laser thing, but it's okay. To each their own. You know what? Do you, Red Pills. Enjoy those DMT lasers. As much as it's not the way I would recommend, I support it more than I support the King James Version of the Bible. Or any version of the Bible, for that matter. Armpit Vajpayee says, I don't agree with Christianity's superiority complex and the fact that they have this exclusive club of getting exempted from everything Sanatan Dharma, which is also called into them is special. I don't know what the Sanatan Dharma thing is, but I agree with you completely. The moment they say that I'm the way and I'm the only way, they lost me. And I think that at that moment it becomes evil. Not that evil and good actually exist in any way other than as contrast to each other, but it's absolutely, without word, a manipulation that is at best been adulterated and turned into something that it was not originally meant to be. The moment that they said, I'm the way and the only way, you know that that didn't come from any realized person's mouth. And that if Jesus existed, he did not say that. When Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within, I could believe that. To say I'm the way and the only way, fuck off. Roberto Garcia, thank you again for the super chat. He says, I'm glad your channel was randomly recommended. I sub to your channel. Keep up the arrow positive change, Bruce. And thank you so much for being a really positive part of this chat as well, Roberto. I'm glad that the algorithm is starting to find people that can appreciate the message. And I really hope to see you in our future chats as well. I hope to see you next time. Don't forget to turn on the bell so you'll be here. We do every Saturday at 6 p.m. Central Time and every Sunday at 10 a.m. Central Time. So please come back. You guys, I'm at 11% battery. I'm going to get through as much of the chat as possible. Babia says, Nirvana, what do I have to do to become reincarnated as something not human? Well, not human. I mean, I guess depends what you want to be reincarnated as. If you want to be reincarnated as an animal, I suppose you could do some, you can kind of operate on the level of an animal and probably be reincarnated as an animal. I can't say for sure on that. If you want to be reincarnated as something more divine, like an angel, something like that, which I think possibly is possible, you could, completely devote your life to operating on a frequency of unconditional love and whatever. You could become like an ascended master, right? An immortal. You could just live for others. Do your karma yoga. Achieve moksha. Achieve liberation. Roberto says, hi, Bruce. What the hell? Is this really you or your twin? Love anyhow of you, big dog. Well, happy to have you here. Thank you for coming. Okay, you guys, I think I possibly had some connection issues there for a moment. Looks like we lost the people in the chat. But I guess I'm at 6% battery anyways. I don't know if the last part made it in, but remind me if anyone's here. What was the last thing I said before it cut off? Because I think my connection went out while I was talking about that. So I have 6% battery if anyone wants to tell me where I was at when it cut off, and we can have a final thought there. I was just reading the chat. How long ago did it cut off? Because I never know that it happens until it shows that the room suddenly doesn't have people in it. What was the last thing I said? because I was reading Max's question about the most divine scenes 5 to 7 minutes ago. Okay. Well, I will say, okay, so the last thing that I was saying, I'll leave off on this thought. People didn't hear any of the scene answers. So Max asked about what were the most divine scenes that I did, and I would say there's many scenes that were really nice, but I will say that I had my enlightenment on the evening after my coach scene with Eliza Ibarra, whom, strangely enough, I actually met before she got into the industry. And there was like an article written about that as her story about how she got into the industry, because she hit me up before that. So it was kind of an interesting synchronicity that it ended up being her that that happened after the scene. And then after 91 days of celibacy, I did a scene for a company called Beliza with Cherry Kiss, where they allowed me to pick the model I wanted to work with. And because I was friends with Cherry Kiss, but on like kind of like a more platonic level, we were friends from Europe, I wanted to work with someone that I already had some type of connection to or something, even if it was in a platonic way. And so I picked Cherry Kiss. And that night, after 91 days of celibacy, I broke my celibacy during that scene. And then I had that whole unconditional love experience where I opened the all-seeing eye and got to look through everyone's eyes simultaneously and had the unconditional love and all that. So those were the two scenes. And then my first scene back after enlightenment was I forgot the girl's name now, but it was one of the boxing scenes. All the boxing scenes from the coach thing were the ones that happened. I did like 4 scenes after my enlightenment before I quit. So anyways, on that note, you guys, I love you all very much. I got 3% batteries. I gotta go. I'll see you next Saturday at 6 p.m. Central Time. And don't forget to turn on notifications, because I'm going to try and stream more often. But I don't want to commit to anything, so it will be at random times or whatever. Plus, I kind of plan on experimenting with a new camera that I got, so I'll probably experiment on not one of our normal streaming days in the near future. Much love to you all. May you go about the rest of your day, week, month, year, etc. life with gratitude and unconditional love. Until next time, thank you, everybody.